Good afternoon. Having just completed the spirited and joyous performance of the service for November, together with all present, I am certain that God the Parent and Oya-sama are looking upon us with joy. As I have been appointed to deliver the sermon this month, I would like to ask for your kind attention. Earlier this year, I was happy to attend the 90th anniversary of Mission Headquarters with my family, coming from New York. However, once we arrived in Los Angeles, my mother was not feeling well, and the next day she was hospitalized with pneumonia. Thankfully, she's doing much better now. But it was unfortunate that she could not be here to celebrate the 90-year history of Mission Headquarters. In 1936, my grandfather was sent to Los Angeles to serve as a secretary of Mission Headquarters. Due to the unfortunate circumstances of World War II, the bishop at the time was sent back to Japan since he had served in the Japanese army in his younger years. My grandfather eventually became the third bishop, and my mother and her 6 siblings were born and raised here at Mission Headquarters. My mother is in many of the historical pictures, including one when she was a baby, when this sanctuary was constructed. Somebody was carrying her, and in the background, the construction of this sanctuary was taking place. So my mother, who is 87 years old, is the same age as this sanctuary. After she married and had children, my parents resolved their minds to become live-in staff members at Mission Headquarters. That is why my siblings and I were also raised here. Ever since that time, my mother has been a fixture at Mission Headquarters for most of its 90-year history. My mother was always a familiar face that most visitors would recognize, even if the staff members would often change. She would be the one who would share the history of Mission Headquarters to the spiritual development course students, and she also dedicated her efforts to nurturing the next generation with the Boys and Girls Association and the Children's Pilgrimage. She would return to Jiba every summer for the Children's Pilgrimage for over 30 years. Some of the children in New York saw our family pictures, and they asked us why the lady from Sanju Hachimoya was in our pictures. And they thought that she lived at 38 Moya, because every time they went to Ojiba, they saw my mother. When my father passed away in 1991, my mother decided to start Heritage Church. In a speech delivered in 2002, at the age of 65 for the Joyous Life Lecture in Europe, she stated, "The reason that I began Heritage Church under Mission Headquarters was to ensure that our family's future generations would have a firm basis of belief and responsibility to carry on our teachings. It was also because I felt that our children will be protected and be given guidance to live a joyous life." She continued by stating, "I'm very happy to see my children and grandchildren following the faith. When my 1.5-year-old grandson, who lives with me, runs to the altar and claps his hands and bows, I think she's talking about Jared. It makes me very happy to think that even after I'm God willing, He will be able to deal with life and its trials, grounded in the faith. He will learn the importance of the service performed daily in the morning and the evening. He will learn, as the years go on, that there is joy in helping others and working together with other children. He will learn that in order to have peace and harmony in this world, we must persevere to get rid of the dust that accumulates so persistently and quickly. Then she ended her speech by saying, living in this time and age is a blessing. All the chances, all the opportunities that I have had, my life and my family, are the greatest joy. It was quite an honor for her to be asked to deliver a speech about her faith to those in Europe. I am certain that her thoughts represent the thoughts of many of us parents whose greatest hopes are that the next generation will follow our footsteps in working towards the joyous life world. Then one day, my mother began to forget things and was diagnosed with dementia. She was no longer able to drive normally, but she did receive permission to drive only to mission headquarters. I heard it was only like a 6-mile radius that she was able to drive. She continued to visit mission headquarters daily to help out with anything she could, such as tuning the women's musical instruments. Actively helping out in Hinokshin at mission headquarters has given my mother so many blessings, and she has lived a long and fruitful life. I am blessed to have a mother who is so well-liked, is easy to work with, and is always willing to help others. I hope that I can be as strong, as dedicated, as sincere, and humble as my mother. She is a model of how I should live, and I am proud to call her my mother. Please join me in thanking my mother, who is here today, for all her contributions to our congregation. I would now like to talk about another model or hero of mine. This year marks the 15th year since Reverend Jiro. Stop crying. The 15th year since Reverend Jiro Morishita passed away. It was about 35 years ago that Reverend Jiro, who was the chairman of the Young Men's Association, was preparing for the Young Men's Association convention. A group of us decided to make a video of our Boyle Heights neighborhood, and this was for the convention. We were traveling in 2 cars, and Jiro was sitting next to me in my car as I was driving and taking the lead. After taking a video of our local King Taco, we decided to drive down the alley behind the building where the Young Men's Association room was to check out a local neighborhood party. Between us and this party was a gang that was hanging out and blocking the alley. I couldn't go around them, so I decided to back out of the alley. They became suspicious of us, possibly thinking that we were from a rival gang, and they pulled out a high-powered rifle, and they shot at us. I heard a loud bang, and Jiro said he was shot, writhing in pain. The bullet had gone through my car door and had hit his leg, shattering his femur which is the largest bone in your body. Jiro was sitting with his legs up, since it was a very small car, and he had big legs. And if it hadn't hit him, it would have hit me. Fortunately, there was a police officer nearby who called an ambulance. But they treated us like we were gang members as opposed to innocent victims. Even at the hospital, there were other gunshot victims that took higher priority, so he wasn't treated all night. This happened around 11 o'clock at night. In the morning, the bishop at the time, Reverend Itakura, decided that he should be transferred to another hospital. By then, so much time had passed, they said that they may need to amputate the leg. They said that even if he recovered, he would never be the same and that he would never be able to play any sports. Jiro getting shot was only the beginning of a nightmare. After being told that he might lose his leg, Jiro said that he started to imagine what it would be like to have a prosthetic leg. He viewed everything in a positive light, and he would often talk about this experience as a point of reflection. As written in Instruction 4, Oya-sama said, "Bud sprout from knots." She encouraged those around her by saying that whatever happens is God's arrangement for guiding people to spiritual maturity. In a glossary of Tennikyo terms, illnesses and other troubles are taught as being knots. Knots in the sense of tree nodes or bamboo joints from which new growth occurs. One is encouraged to take advantage of knots, whether encountered in the form of illness or other troubles, as opportunities to reflect deeply on one's dusty use of the mind, awaken to the parental love embodied in the knots, and commit oneself to a life rooted in the mind of sincerity. In the divine directions, we find the following teaching. When you find yourself in a situation where you think this may be your end, recall that it is a knot. Make a commitment of spirit and stand firm. If you stand firm, the truth of heaven will work for you. This I teach. Many of us, especially with the Young Men's Association, took this incident as a knot for all of us to reflect upon. Jiro showed us the way to proceed through his actions and his demeanor. He never expressed anger or regret about the incident, and instead, he was able to regain his ability to function at a high level, including being an active coach for Tendi Judo and helping to build sanctuaries for numerous churches and fellowships, including New York Center. He was also pivotal in establishing nurturing programs such as the Joy Workshop and the 3-day course. 1 year after the incident, I was living in Tendi City, teaching English at Oyasato High School. Almost all of Jiro's operation and rehabilitation was covered by a state program for victims of violent acts. After multiple surgeries and physical therapy, the only thing that remained was the surgery to remove the plate, the metal plate, and the very large screws which held his leg in place while it healed. However, the money in the state program was all used up, and he did not have enough money to cover the surgery. Fortunately, with special permission, he was allowed to have the required surgery done at Ikoinoe Hospital in Tendi. Jiro had a high school friend. Her name was Yuko Hirano, whose younger sister, Yoko, worked in the operating room of that hospital. Yuko asked Yoko to help Jiro with his surgery, so they became friends. I visited Jiro at the hospital every day after work, and I met Yoko briefly. After his hospitalization, Jiro invited Yoko and me to dinner, telling Yoko that I was really lonely in Japan. I wasn't. Jiro kind of nudged us into getting together, and we eventually married, moved to New York to work at Tenri Cultural Institute, and then we had 3 children. Years later, Kuni Fumioka was a graduate student at University of Connecticut, and he would come to New York Center every month. We introduced him to Michiko, Yoko's younger sister, and they got married. They are now doing their best as the head minister and wife of Midwest Church in Chicago. Then, more recently, Michiko introduced her older sister, Yuko, who was the original friend of Jiro in high school, to Reverend Kimura, our Sashi Zukata for the first time, of Chicago Church. They too were a good match, and they just got married last month. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Reverend Masahito and Yuko Hirano Kimura. Over there. Welcome to the family. So from that one bullet, 35 years ago, we now have 3 couples and 3 children that do their best to contribute to the path in America. To me, this truly feels like multiple buds that have sprouted from a very difficult and unimaginable knot. Jiro always felt like an older brother to me that I could always look up to and ask for advice. He was an inspiring leader and helped to pave the way for many of us to follow. Even to this day, it is difficult to understand why he left us at such an early age. However, he still lives with us through Brotherhood Church and the Morishita family, as well as the lives he has touched through his dedication to the path. Third on my list of heroes is Wesley Dote. We were all shocked and saddened to hear of his passing away last month. He was a friend to everyone and dedicated his time to driving from Sacramento to mission headquarters monthly, returning to Jiba every summer for the Children's Pilgrimage and doing his best to nurture the next generation through the Students' Association and the Nurturing Committee. He was joyous, inspired, encouraging, kind, generous, and dedicated. He was always around to lend a helping hand behind the scenes, to take pictures, and to buy tacos for everyone. These are characteristics that we all strive to be better at. Wesley was kind of like an angel within our congregation, and we didn't even realize how much he meant to all of us. He will be deeply missed. In Instruction 4, the Shinbashira encourages us to follow the divine model of Oya-sama. This is a wonderful teaching which can be challenging and sometimes an unreachable goal. The 3 heroes that I just mentioned did an amazing job of following Oya-sama's model. We can look to their examples as fellow travelers on the path to help us along, to give us the energy, inspiration, and motivation to push forward for the greater good of our community and our fellow children of God, our brothers and sisters around the world. Instruction 4 states, our predecessors earnestly followed the path that had begun with Oya-sama alone by using her divine model as their dependable guide and maintain the path for us to walk on. The efforts to learn and pass down the faith from parents to children, from children to grandchildren, and so on, will allow this path to continue for endless generations. Let us do our best to continue the path that our predecessors so earnestly followed and maintained for us to walk on. When I look at our wonderfully designed sanctuary at New York Center, and I'd like to invite everybody to visit, if you can, I'm reminded of the incredible efforts of Reverend Keigo Morishita, who was the New York Center minister at the time, and his son, Reverend Jiro, all the efforts that they made so that we can do our best to pray and help others. When I look at the landscape around this New York Center sanctuary, as well as the wonderful garden here at Mission Headquarters, I'm reminded of Reverend Uesigi, who was in charge of these projects as a landscape architect, and his efforts to raise our awareness about the environment. And when we prepare our audio-visual systems and translation equipment at our New York Center sanctuary, I remember Mr. Yokoi traveling all the way from Los Angeles multiple times to New York, even with a kidney condition, to install our systems. Let us do our best to pass down these stories of sincerity to nurture the next generations. As we are in the middle of our pre-anniversary period, it is important to remember that anniversaries are also seen as knots. We hope that new buds can sprout from the upcoming 140th anniversary of Oyasama in 2026, as well as New York Center's 50th anniversary that will be celebrated in 2027. Let us do our best to grow spiritually during this period to bring joy to God the Parent and Oyasama and our many predecessors of the path in America. God is urging us to renew our faith and energy as we increase our efforts to nurture our youth so that they can carry the path forward for many years to come. I look forward to working together with everyone here, united in mind as we proceed on the path of the joyous life during this special time. Thank you very much.